All right, we are live. Thanks for joining us for our Arts and Veterans panel today. I'm Tammy Miner-Shaken. I'm the chair of the Frisco Arts Foundation, and our goal is to champion the arts through advocacy, education, and grant making. You know, there is a lot going on in the world right now, even as we speak. So it's vitally important that we find ways to bring us together. And so we'll be talking about two things that do just that: passion for our country and love of the arts. And our guests today have those two, they're undeniable. So I'm really looking forward to the discussion. Before we get started though, I want to let you know that you can be part of the conversation if you just add your questions in the comments. We have a volunteer, Kalika, who's sitting behind the camera, and she's going to let us know when there's a question that comes through. So we definitely want it to be a joint conversation. And I also want to say thank you to Annette Weiskup with Insperity for hosting us in this beautiful place here. We're at Frisco Station. And Anthony Barocas is our live stream producer. If you need any live stream for your organization or your business, go to streamfor.us with Anthony, and he'll help you out. Everything has to be virtual now, so it's a good person to know. So, all right, well, let's get started with our amazing group. If you're joining us for the first time on Frisco Arts and this arts panel, and you're wondering, what is this and what are we doing today? Frisco Arts has been hosting panels for the last couple years, actually, to talk about the intersection of arts and other sectors. So we had an arts and health, arts and business, arts and tourism. Before January, in January before COVID hit, we discussed arts and sports. So we already had the arts and veterans topic in the books, and then COVID hit. So we don't have anyone in the audience today, but I know you're watching online, so thank you for joining us. And this is going to be recorded and put on our YouTube page, so you can also share it with others. But we wanted to make sure that we kept this one in our calendar, because one of our previous board members used to say that every day is actually Veterans Day. And I love that sentiment. I know for me, as a Korean American, second generation, there's no way I would be here living in America and enjoying my freedom without the brave men and women that are in uniform, securing our freedom, and all of you. So, it's an exciting time for us to be talking about this, even right now in our nation's history. So, I want to introduce our guests to you. Around the room here, we have Peter Burns. Peter is the program director of Frisco's Young Entrepreneurs Academy, a board member of the Frisco Chamber of Commerce, the Frisco Education Foundation, Frisco Public Art, and Junior Achievement of Dallas. He also serves on the Leadership Frisco Advisory Council and is chairman of the Mindbender Academy. He received a Congressional Veteran Commendation, was 2019 Distinguished Veteran of the Year, Frisco Style Magazine's Person of the Year in 2014, was also named the Frisco Chamber Citizen of the Year, and was also runner-up for the Dallas Cowboys Community Quarterback Award. So he's like local celebrity. So thanks, Peter, for being here. Rob Altman, he is currently serving as the chair of the Frisco Mayor Jeff Cheney's Veterans Advisory Committee. Rob's a graduate of the George H.W. Bush School of Government and Public Service and is an Art of War scholar at the U.S. Army's Command and General Staff College. Rob is a member of the American Legion Peter J. Corsi Post 178, the Frisco Veterans of Foreign Wars Post 8273, and Texas Society of the Sons of the American Revolution. So thank you, Rob, for being here. He's also a really great vocalist, so maybe you'll sing for us today. We'll see. Sheena Lawless. Sheena is the first female commander elected to the Frisco VFW Post 8273 since its inception in 1968. She also serves on the Frisco Mayor Jeff Cheney's Veteran Advisory Committee and is an active member of the Women's Veterans of America. She worked as a paralegal with the U.S. Army Judge Advocate General Corps, assisting military judges and lawyers with legal matters and judicial work all over the world, including Seoul, South Korea, and Tikrit, Iraq. So thank you, Sheena, for being here. And Bryce Hansen, he is currently the managing director of M&A at Wentworth Management Services. He graduated from West Point, worked in the U.S. Census Bureau, and served in the U.S. Army Special Forces as a Green Beret in Iraq and Afghanistan. Upon returning to the States, he has begun painting and is a self-taught artist. You can see some of his work behind us. He He's a creative humanitarian, a diplomat warrior, and he's comfortable with the ambiguous. I stole that from our conversation. So first of all, thank you all for being here. Thank you for your service to our country. Why don't we go around the room and just start a little bit with where you're originally from and how you ended up in the Frisco and North Texas area. So Peter, we'll start with you.
Well, thank you, Tammy. Thanks for the opportunity to be part of this discussion. I was born in Jamaica, in Kingston, Jamaica. And my family and I, we moved from Jamaica to New York City when I was 12 years old, August 8, 1972. Now I'm trying to remember the dates.
Right.
And grew up, so went through middle school and high school in New York City and then joined the military. And I wish I could tell you that I had a yearning to join the military. It wasn't. It was the recruiter that kept calling my house, and my mom said, "Just go see what she wants so she can stop calling." And so she showed me videos of what soldiers do and all that. And what got me excited about it was driving a tank, because I wanted to just run over a tree or something. You know, I just saw the excitement of it. And she said to me, "Where would you get a job driving a tank once you get out of the Army?" And that was the first real time that I had to make a decision. And I had scored very well in the technology area, so that's where she steered me towards, and I went into that field, learning how to, install telephones and switchboards, and I was the operator. I was the person on the other end that says, "Operator, may I help you?" Making corrections. And so I got into engineering and architect design and everything else throughout my career from there. And so when I retired from the Army, I moved to Texas, which I was stationed here at Fort Hood a couple of times, so I always wanted to come back here. My wife wanted to come back to Texas. And so we moved back to Texas and started our second career here in the Frisco area. So I'm excited to be part of this community and to be able to contribute to the community as well as what we contributed to now services.
Thanks, Peter.
Yep.
How about you, Rob?
So I was born in Brunswick, Georgia. My father at the time was stationed at what is now Glencoe. He was an enlisted man in the United States Navy. I had a grandfather who served as an officer in the Coast Guard and another uncle who had served as an officer in the Air Force and was a pilot in Vietnam. So service in our family in the military was generational, if you will. So I grew up mostly in southeastern states. So my wife Shelley, who is an original Texan, likes to call me a Southern mutt. But so we joke. When I came into the family, I very quickly realized that I had to say I wasn't born here, but I got here as quick as I could. Yeah. I had to go down to Texas A&M University to get my citizenship as a Texan. Right. After serving enlisted in the Army, and I didn't have somebody telling me to do something technical when I joined. I had dreams of jumping out of airplanes and that sort of a thing. So I served as an enlisted man in the 82nd Airborne Division, and then later on realized that I should probably finish my education as I started to get a little older and realized that might help me down the line. I did go back, finish my undergrad at A&M in history. So as we talk about art, you'll see how history has influenced my perception of the world. I later went back to A&M at the George H.W. Bush School and studied international relations as an officer. It was a great program that the Army sent a lot of us to get our graduate education. Very, very fortunate for that. We always knew we would settle in North Texas, but I thank and credit my wife for choosing Frisco. I was at a point in my time with the Army as a major and a battalion executive officer where I had no awareness other than my battalion and my soldiers. Right. And so Shelley was my hero, and she did all the research on where we needed to move the family. And so part of it being familial, because her mother lives in Plano, and we wanted to be close, and then she did research on Frisco, and we are one of many who come here for the school district. So Frisco ISD drew us to Frisco. And the first event that I attended in Frisco was one of the first events was a Frisco Veteran Social, and I had met J.D. Lawless and Sheena's husband at a recruiting event at Fort Hood. And he corroborated what Shelley had already been telling me about Frisco was wonderful. And then I went and saw the Community Day Parade a couple of years ago, and I thought, this is right out of a movie. This is where I need to be.
Yeah.
And so for many different reasons, Frisco was a place we fell in love with.
Absolutely. Is that community parade, is that canceled this year? It is, right? Oh, so sad. Well, we're celebrating here.
That's right.
Yes. Sheena, how about you?
I'm originally from this area, actually. My husband retired after 20 years. I also did 5 years active duty. In 2008, he was working on his second career, and I said, well, let's go home. So he's originally from Arkansas. My mom was very thankful. I married a Southern boy. Yeah, we just settled back here, and this is where, this has always been home for me, but now it's even more of a home because of the veteran community that I'm involved in. A little bit about my service. You already kind of said everything with the JAG Corps. Got to do all that. That was pretty cool. The reason why I joined the military is I graduated high school very young. A lot younger than most people do. I was 16 when I graduated from high school. And, there's a lot of pressure on kids to have everything kind of figured out. And at 16, I had no idea really what I wanted to do. So I joined the Army. I also come from, I have people in my family that have served. And so it was something that I just kind of did, but it ended up really being a blessing. Just because it really kind of shaped me and it opened doors and showed me passions that I didn't even realize that I kind of had. I just kind of gravitated towards the legal world. I'm still in the legal world. Business transactions and regulatory, in short form, I work on contracts with FedEx, and that's just one of the things that I like to do on the side. Most people think I'm the commander of the VFW full-time, which it is a full-time job, but that's not, I also have a professional career as well.
Right.
And I really enjoy the veteran community just because it's really opened friendships and networking and really opened your eyes and made you aware of all the amazing benefits that being in a community like Frisco it's just beneficial for everybody.
No, we're so glad you're here.
Thank you.
And Bryce, how
Yeah,
about
so my story is very similar and has elements of what everybody said already. Had a very similar conversation with a recruiter that my mom used to work at the high school I attended. She came home, she's like, I met the nicest young man and I invited him over to come talk to you. Little did she know that she had already set the trap. So he came over and, what do you want to do in life? And I had zero clue, because what 17-year-old does. And he's like, we had videos and everything. And I'm like, wow, you get to shoot guns? Because my dad won't let me have a gun. He's like, what kind of gun do you want? You want a machine gun? Yes. He's like, you want a tank? Yes. He's like, so I took all the tests, and I wanted to do the same thing. I want to be infantry. I want to be, I want to be in the, where it's really aggressive and testosterone filled. And he's like, yeah, how about mechanic? So I was like, I don't know anything about that. And he goes, combat mechanic. So I was like, okay, yeah. I have no idea what that is, but I got super excited about it. So I mean, if that doesn't explain to you the naivete of a 17-year-old filled with hormones, then nothing else will. But early on, I quickly realized I was not cut out to be a mechanic. And I think my leaders identified that as well. What I did have a hankering for was leading other people to do my projects. I was like, I don't know how to change out an engine block, but I can convince all these other people to. And so I had a first sergeant. He said, what's your horrible as a soldier? Really strong, because you get in trouble a lot. So they ended up sending me to West Point, and I was a horrible cadet as well. Asked too many questions. Why? That's not good in the military. I grew up all over the Midwest, and then once I graduated West Point, I just did about 14 years overseas. And then between Korea, Germany, Iraq, and Afghanistan, of course. And then after getting out of the military, I lived overseas in the Middle East in Dubai with my family for about 5 years, working for their government, doing some change management consultancy in their Department of Defense. And then very much like your wife, my wife and I sat down and we just started looking at where do we want to live in the United States. We want to raise our kids back home. And we just started very systematically looking at different cities across the country and no family ties, like some of you guys have to the area. We just looked at the schools. We looked at the economic opportunities to leave the military and the contracting government space, and where could we reinvent ourselves. And there's just, this Frisco is kind of like the little American dream. Whatever you want to do, it's here, and you can achieve it, and you can reinvent. I'm a walking example of somebody who went from being a Green Beret and being a contractor for 5 years, and then coming with no network, no family, and just picking Frisco on a map and saying, we're going to move there because there's opportunity, and that's where we can maximize our potential. So
That's awesome. Yeah, no, there is no city like it, truly.
it's phenomenal.
So let's transition a little bit into the idea of art. And I really believe that, storytelling is really the heart of all art forms. Visual art, music, dance. It's about human connection, human expression, and really just the way that we relate to each other. So I think, with storytelling, and with all of you, there's a lot of people out watching today that know you in the community, but they haven't heard some of your stories about what makes you you, and especially during your service. So one of the best ways I think that we can honor our veterans is to actually share those and speak them aloud. So I want to ask each of you, during your time in service, what would you say, and I'm sure this is a tough one because there's so many, but what would you say was one of the most challenging experiences you had that made an impact on you, and why? I can see wheels turning. Who wants to go? Rob?
Okay. So I was very fortunate to serve in many different units, but there's one experience that was very formidable for me. It was both tough emotionally, and then it was also very rewarding, probably more so from a strategic and a personal growth level, but it was when I was serving south of Tikrit in a place called Samarra, and for those that are watching that don't know, Samarra, Iraq is where one of the third holiest sites in Islam is at, and in 2006, Al-Qaeda blew up this mosque. And we had, as an army already, I want to say it was either 2 or 3 times, executed what we called clear, hold, and build strategy in that area. But I was very fortunate that when my unit went there, the leadership, the people were amazing. From a cultural standpoint, I am a big believer that culture will set a tone either positively or negatively. Mm-hmm. And fortunately for us, we had a very positive culture. And it was best explained this way: kill those that, and I'm sorry, that's raw, but kill those that need to be killed and help those that need to be helped. I guess the politically correct way to say it would be eliminate the threat and help the people that need to be helped. But from a soldier's standpoint, you can understand that. But it set the tone for honor. It set the tone for self-preservation, and it was just in a harsh environment. It was very positive. What I loved about that experience is that while we lost people, that hurts, and I still think of them and think about their families and look to see how those children are doing, and I wonder how those mothers and dads are doing. That you cannot have lived through that and not have experienced that, and we can talk about that a little bit later, but that experience was so positive because on the front side of that deployment, there was what we call kinetic element, which means fighting element. But on the back side, I was able, because of my leaders, to see, let's just say nation building, because that's familiar in the narrative, actually played out in a positive fashion. I saw bad things that didn't happen that could have happened with respect to policing. And it all went to dignity and respect. So I was somebody that was foreign to Iraq. I was not an Iraqi, but there I was in their country. And so, and I know Bryce understands this because as a Special Forces soldier, that's understanding the culture that they are in is something that they're trained to do, and they know secondhand. I was just very fortunate to have leaders in this unit who had a lot of special operations capability, who knew that we needed to learn the language, learn the people, find out what was important to them. Not so much, anyway, I digress. But that experience was both because it was both hard, and it also showed me a model of positive in the midst of a tough situation. And since then, I leave that knowing that in time and space, things will change in Iraq, but I know that we impacted people in Samarra and in the Sunni Triangle for good at that point in time. And that makes me sleep very well at night.
Right, right.
Yeah, and as Rob was talking, a couple of things came to mind in that same mindset, and that is, I told you about the people that were in my life to help me to make good decisions, but later on, when I was on a deployment, our mindset, you're so locked in on the mission, right? You know what you're going to do. There's no distractions, because when you're responsible for soldiers, you're responsible for taking them to the battlefield, and you're responsible for bringing them back home. You don't ever want to lose anyone there, so you're just simply locked in. And I remember in one of the deployments we were on, and I was in the restroom washing my hand, and a lady was in there cleaning at the time, and it was snowing in the middle of May, and I said, wow, I can't believe it's snowing in the middle of May. And she said to me, everything has been messed up ever since the war. And I was shocked that she spoke English. But what it gave me was an opportunity to just listen to her story. And she told me that all the males that in her family, her brother, cousins, husband, were all missing, right? And it put in perspective the reason why we were there. Now, in all our previous deployments, it was always, you were going on combat exercises where you're eliminating the threat, helping those that need help. But this time we were going in a peacekeeping operation, right, in Bosnia. And so there wasn't, the threat was there, but it was, you were going in there to be part of the solution to help them recover, number one, stop the war, but then help them to recover. And listening to her story put it all in perspective as to the reason why we were going there, right? We take for granted here all the things that we have for freedom. We know if we want to start business and fail, we have the privilege to do that, right? But there in their country, if they weren't following the government, then whoever was in control would eliminate them, right? The people that was responsible for them. And so when we had the opportunity to go in to prevent that from happening, and then to hear someone that we were impacting,
Right.
it really put things in perspective as to why you're serving and why you're there.
Wow.
Yep.
Well, mine's a little different, and this might be a little off track, but when I joined the Army, there were bets against me as to how long I would last. I was just trying to be better than Goldie Hawn, Private Benjamin, okay? I mean, we can talk about, amazing Green Berets and Special Forces. That was not me. There were people, she won't last a week, 30 days, and then, you know what? After I got in there and I got my feet wet and I figured it out, okay, I can do this. It was almost like a challenge to me at that point. Like I had something to prove. Like I had, not necessarily like they were discouraging, like, oh, she can't do it, but that she can't do it, like hack it kind of thing. So, don't get me wrong, my family was very supportive, but they did secretly in the back of their minds say she'll be back home very soon. So like I said, just trying to be better than Goldie Hawn, Private Benjamin. So, but what's really cool about it is, and I didn't see the impact then as I do now, because at the time I had no idea. Like a lot of people refer to people like me that maybe had an administrative position in the JAG Corps as, an admin or a paper pusher, or, not the ones that really go to war. And that is so far from the truth at this point, because I mean, I'm sitting here going, okay, yeah, that's my job, and I can do my job well. Everybody has a job, right? And that's how the Army functions, or that's how the military functions. And then I quickly find myself, okay, well, I'm no longer behind the desk. Now I'm sitting in a Humvee with all these people riding down in a convoy going, okay, I can be, right in the middle of all of this, just like the other person is. And so what is really impactful today that I like to share is just that preconceived notion where women in the military aren't necessarily that always that admin or always that person, and that there's real combat situations that occur that doesn't care if you're a male or a female,
right.
or it doesn't care really what your job is. And so that's one of the things. Just the other day, somebody said, oh, well, you're a paper pusher, or you're admin or whatever, and I was like, that IED didn't really care when it blew up my truck that I'm a paper pusher.
Yeah.
And so she said, oh, and what's really cool about it too is I never really figured that I didn't have like a long military career, or, I did what was asked of me, and I feel like I did it well, but there was nothing I necessarily did that was leaps and bounds above anybody else. But it's really cool to come home and be visible with my service, and what then encourages others to be more visible with their service. Because I'll be the first one to tell you, when I first came back here and transitioning with my husband doing 20 years active duty and retiring, I said, oh, well, I only did 5 as opposed to his 20. Or, it's almost like I was apologizing for my service. And then finally somebody said, like, no, you did your time. You did what was asked of you, and you did it well. And there's nothing to be sorry about. And later on, I realized after, the VFW here in Frisco has grown substantially over the last few years, and, over 50% of our membership is now 50 years and younger, and 22% of our members are female. I'm going, okay, so when we all start to be visible with our service, it's just very encouraging to hear other people's stories, and just to kind of be in the presence of this panel alone is a little overwhelming for someone like me. But then I just have to realize, like, okay, it's not about me, it's about everybody else, and being visible with their service and saying, hey, I'm here too. So that's what I really, really go back to. The whole impact thing is like, okay, maybe I didn't really understand then, but I feel like I'm kind of understanding a little bit now.
Yeah, no, your representation is so important because, like you said, people see you and they think, oh, I could do that, or I could be part of it. So, no.
Or don't necessarily apologize that you're not special, or, you didn't do anything crazy, or, you didn't jump out of airplanes or fast rope down out of a Blackhawk, but you know what? You still did your time.
Right.
And it takes all of us to,
Exactly.
make sure that, we continue to be the best country in the entire world.
Right, all service is important.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Bryce, yeah,
There's,
how about you?
so I want to echo some of the same things. So one thing that I think the military does really well, and it's something that Rob touched on, is mental tenacity, and adaptability to change to an ever-changing situation. The enemy gets to vote when you're in war, right? They don't care who's inside the vehicle, whether they're an admin, JAG, or, the guy who's like at the tip of the spear, right? They're just going. So you always have to be able to adjust. So the military does a really good job of training that mental adaptability to go from offense, defense, and to immediately go into a stability operation or helping those that need to be helped after literally minutes after you just got done dealing with the threat. And so for me, the biggest challenge for me is coming from a career of just jumping through hoops in very ambiguous situations and trying to figure it out. My biggest challenge was when I left the service was, you spend every soldier in every country. I've been all over the world with different soldiers. They're all the same. No matter what country they're serving in, they all hate their job. They hate their boss. And they think they could do it better. The food's never hot enough. It's never tasty. The sleep is horrible. The equipment is outdated. It's like, even if it's not, soldiers love to complain, right? Even with all that mental tenacity, we love to complain. So when I was getting ready to leave the military, I had all these complaints in my head about why I'm leaving. And then when I was transitioning, I quickly realized, yeah, that wasn't so bad. I kind of miss it. And so I know we're going to talk about camaraderie and the way people connect, whether it's through veteran organizations or through the arts. But for me, that was the biggest challenge, was not having connection anymore with people that I could relate to. I mean, we don't know each other, but immediately as soon as we came in, it's like boom, boom, boom. And it's like I've never met Peter before, right? But immediately there's that connection, that camaraderie, and there's that yearning for connection. I know you see it at the VFW. But being overseas for so many years, and transitioning, and there wasn't any of that stuff. So it's just, for me, I had to channel all of my, what am I going to connect to? And then that's how I ended up getting into the arts, was what am I connecting to? And so I started painting my past.
Well, that's perfect transition, because I wanted
You're
to
welcome.
talk about that. Definitely wanted to talk about that. And then the concept of, how art has the power to make invisible wounds visible, because I have heard, that veterans, you have actual physical wounds that you can see, but then there are things that you cannot see that you're struggling with, like you said. So tell us a little bit about your journey into painting, and then one of these works that kind of exemplifies that. Okay,
sure. So I said I left the service in 2012, and immediate couple months here and there, but basically moved to the United Arab Emirates within a couple months. And I was working with their military and how to transform where basically the U.S. military was in the late 90s into where we were, and they wanted to do that in about 18 months. So no small task. But learning the culture, they had a certain thing where they didn't really want to work past 1:30, 2 o'clock. And in our military, they're like 1, 2 o'clock, you're just getting your day started, I remember when I first came in the Army, one of the sayings was, we'll do more before 9 a.m., before then you'll do all day. And that saying bears out, because when it's 9 p.m. and you're still going, you're like, oh man, when does this day end? So I quickly found myself coming home early, and early. I'd be home by noon, 2 o'clock, and my wife's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. She's like, I didn't get married to you to spend all this time with you. Like, you need to get a hobby, go to school, you need to do something. But this is when we were married. The first 5 years we were married, I was gone over 2.5 of those years. So 50-50 relationship. She always told me, as long as you get a job and you're home 50% of the time, we're good. Like, we'll be happy. And so now I was home all the time. She's like, this isn't working. And so I had all this extra time on my hands. And so, what do you do with time? New place, no friends. You just start reflecting on your experience that I just left months before. And so I was a amateur photographer when, I always had a camera on me. With technology, we were talking that before this even started, was like, we were talking about Blu-ray and Laserdisc, but with cameras, it was the quest to get smaller and smaller. So everywhere I went in the military, I had a tiny digital camera. And so I have tens of thousands of photographs. And so then as I had time on my hands, I was actually starting to go through those things and process. Now I had the time to do it, and I was removed from the situation. I had time to process mentally some of those images that I'd seen, and then just sit and look at it, and then get the smell, the feeling, the noise, just the whole atmospherics of everything that went on in that image, and start to relive it. And what I found is it was evoking some emotions that I didn't even know I had at the time. And so working through those emotions, and so I started picking different pictures, and I said, I want to spend more time with that image. I want to spend more time with what was going on. Maybe not in that particular image. So like the dog is a good one. Like that one's titled, I Got Your Six. So whereas we were on a mission in Afghanistan in an area that coalition forces hadn't been in years, because it was in a remote area. It was the terrain was easily defendable from the enemy. And once we got there, and they knew we were there, heavy machine gun fire immediately. Like, they weren't RPGs, rockets. They were not happy that after a couple years of their little control that we decided to show up. And so once we had eliminated some of those threats, I had a chance, and I'm just kind of like sitting back and I'm looking, and our dog handler, he was just watching a little area, taking a little pause in the break, and I just thought it was peculiar that the dog, who was an integral part of the team, nobody told him to do it, but he knew his part, right? So whether it's admin or everything, like everybody's got a part to play, and even the dog knew his part to play, which was, he's looking this way, I'm gonna watch his back. And so in the military, we have that saying, I got your six, I got your back, I'm there for you. And so when I was transitioning, I realized how powerful that was, because I was thinking, well, who's got my back? I live in a foreign country, I don't know anybody, so who's got my back? And I think that's really valuable, what this is, what we're talking about, what you do with the VFW and everybody that's connected with advisory boards and things. And that it all comes back to that camaraderie. And so there's the camaraderie between the dog and the handler, and then there's the camaraderie with the greater military community at large. So I think a lot of that stuff gets extrapolated from that image for me, because I spent so much time with it.
And this piece over here, I mean, tell us a little bit about what's in the background and what it represents.
Yeah, so I had started painting a series of just the GWAT, or the Global War on Terrorism series, which these two images behind me are from. And then I wanted to, I started connecting with some of the older guys here in the DFW area, and namely guys from the Vietnam era. So I would go down to, I didn't go to the VFW, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. Frisco's very different.
So I connected with Green Beret Association and some of the old timers, the guys that would, had jungle boots, but they had footprints on the barefoot footprints, and they were going cross-border operations that were completely off books. And sitting and talking to these stories, and I was thinking to myself, I've really flushed out a lot of the stuff that's in my life, and now I'm hearing them, and I'm like, these guys are crazy. And they're hearing my stories and like, you're crazy, it's just, and I think that helps put context to, no matter what situation you're in, it gets back to that mental adaptability of whatever situation you're in, that's just normal for you and your unit and your brothers and sisters in arms. That's just normal. And so when you leave the service, back to my challenge of, where's my camaraderie? Where do I fit in? And then you get this, and like, I can immediately trust everybody here, and I can lower my defenses. If there was a panel of people and it wasn't virtual, I wouldn't be as forthcoming, because I'm like, well, I don't know those people, and I don't know you guys, but I immediately feel trust, right? Because of that camaraderie. So I started talking to these guys, and I wanted to spend time with, and try to walk a mile in their shoes, and start looking at the Vietnam generation, and looking at my transition, looking at their transition. So I started looking at some very iconic photos. And so I just started doing a deep dive, and I had an idea to use comic books from the Vietnam era as a canvas. So in the background, I'm not that good of an artist. I can't paint all those images in the background. That's all strips from the Nam, which is a Marvel comic that I made a canvas out of, and then I painted an iconic image of a guy and that I labeled the duality of man, right? So here he is, in military green, but he's got the bandolier of M60 machine gun ammo over him, because he's ready for that, dealing with the threat, right? But then you look at his eyes, and he's kind of like, what is his thought process? And the fact that he's wearing the piece, so he's symbolizing, I'm a killer by trade, but my human nature says, I just want peace. I just want, why can't we all just get along? So I think there's every soldier, when they deploy, or they're in going from kinetic offense to defense to stability operations, dealing with the threat, helping those that need to help, and that mental transition, they're constantly saying, well, who am I in this situation? Am I a soldier? Am I leading with my weapon, or am I leading with my heart? Am I being rational? Am I being emotional? And so I think that the contrast, or the juxtaposition of the bullets and the peace sign, kind of rolls into the thought process of what's going on in his head behind those eyes.
Yeah, wow. You know, it's really interesting to think about like the heart and the brawn, because that's really what service is. I mean, but you're all, because I'm not ever served. So to me, to hear you say that, it actually is really insightful, because I had this perception that you have to be kind of all brawn, you know, when you're in the Army and you're, doing your thing. But we're all human, and we all want to actually work on peace and get things to work together. And but sometimes you have to do the hard things to make that happen, because there is evil in the world. So thank you for sharing the stories behind both these pieces. And then Rob, I know you brought a piece as well that I think speaks to that too. Can you tell us a little bit about this one right here?
So real quick, I
Yeah.
wanted to say that this panel is really relevant, I think. One of the things with Frisco and our veteran community that Sheena touched on that I love for everybody that's watching that loves art is that 2020 has been we were talking about this before, 2020 has been an interesting year. And so I love that we're talking about, Rise is talking about tenacity and resilience. And this is something that I think as veterans, that why we are so appropriately placed in the community right now is to share our experience of tough experiences with others and say, hey, you can get through this. This is a tough time, but you can deal with tough situations and you can come out on the positive side of it. I also wanted to say that, Sheena, you're more the historical model than those of us that have served for a long time. Historically, here goes my history side. In the history of America, we are citizen soldiers. And that is since the 60s and the idea of a professional soldier, there's been a little, not a negative friction point, but a friction point as we developed this idea of a professional soldier. But historically in America, we're citizen soldiers. You serve your time, and then you go home, as John Keeney likes to say, you serve your country, now you go home and serve your community. Right. And so I think that's appropriate. With respect to the Soldier's Cross, if you're catching up on cues around the room, some of us are sort of reverent with this. I'm a little more comfortable because it sits in my house. It sort of creeps Shelley out every once in a while. But because she's like, you got to get that out of my house, bro. But this is, and I know she's watching, so she really didn't say that. And I know she loves the...
We love you, Shelley.
You're so in trouble when you
I'm totally in trouble. So this is, to the Army service member, this is a Soldier's Cross. To the sailor, airman, Marine, or Coast Guardsmen and women, this is a battlefield cross. And it goes, in history, it goes beyond the American service member, but it is essentially is a way to honor those that we've lost. And so, the boots and the weapon and the dog tags that are here. And this specific bronze has, you can't see it from the camera, but it has the state of Texas engraved on the left side of the helmet, and it states Texas. And this was made for me by a friend.
Wow.
Well, actually, it was made by a friend of a friend. So I met a gentleman by the name of George Turak in Philadelphia. He's a Vietnam veteran. He was an E4, a specialist. He had served 2 years in Vietnam, was wounded, 2 Purple Hearts, a Bronze Star. He was over in the jungle running around with the 1st Cavalry Division. And he came home, and like many who serve and then come home, he was, what do I do now? And so he had loved art when he was growing up, spent a lot of time in some of the art museums around Philadelphia, and would just go look at the paintings. So he became an art collector, and some of his historical art pieces, you guys, are just amazing. He has some of the casts from Remington in his office. I mean, the Bronco, the one that I think it's the Scout. So he has 3 pieces. They're just amazing. He has original pieces that you only see in the Smithsonian, that the sister or brother picture, the Jefferson, the Washington, some of the more famous pieces that are in the Smithsonian on the mall. So I love it when I go visit and stay with him and Michelle, because those pieces are gorgeous, and they always joke and say, "Yeah, Rob's going to go stay in the president's room," because there's I think the artist's name was Sully, if memory serves correct. So for those of you that are more educated with art, you'll know who to Google. But this bronze was made by a friend of George, and another Vietnam veteran named George Chernak, or Andrew Chernak, Andrew Chernak. And Andrew Chernak actually came up with several bronzes. He's done a lot of work for Gettysburg, the battlefield, and he also did the the Gold Star Mother's plaque and Gold Star Mother's bronze. And I don't remember exactly where that's located right now, but Andrew is a phenomenal sculptor, and this was made, I'm pretty sure this one was made in the Philadelphia Iron Works. And last year we were doing an Army Gala to raise money for the Army Scholarship Foundation and the Museum of the U.S. Army. And so George had Andrew make this for us, and we brought it down to Texas. And we may very well soon have this on display in Frisco somewhere to honor everybody that is served. And so it is both reverent, but also evident, and makes one think about service. And I just love the sculpture. So
Yeah. It's actually amazing that it's a sculpture, because it
Right.
just looks like it's those actual pieces.
right.
You know?
Right.
The detail is incredible. I know the camera can't see it, but I took some photos and we'll put them on Facebook. So let's transition to the concept of art and community and service, like you were talking about. You know, each of you are involved in some way with our community, but especially with the veterans. Sheena, do you want to tell us a little more about VFW and your role and what you guys do?
Absolutely. The VFW is Veterans of Foreign Wars. We are one of the longest standing nonprofits in the city of Frisco. We were mustered in 1968, January 25th, 1968. 52 years we've been around. The Frisco Garden Club has us beat, so they've been around a little bit longer than that. You know, to be a member of the Veterans of Foreign Wars, you have to have served in a conflict, boots on ground, somewhere, whether it be, you know, World War II, Vietnam, Korea, Iraq, Afghanistan, Gulf War, Panama, I mean, you name it. But what we do is just, you think of veterans like the initial hub. You know, you have different nonprofits that are specialized in different things, you know, specifically mental health or something like that. We do it all. So whether you're needing your resume and a job transitioning, we have people that do that. Whether you're needing somebody to help you with put in your disability claims or get your education benefits, we do that. We have a flag exchange program. There's businesses all around the city of Frisco and even outside that purchase flags for us that, you know, it funds our relief fund. We have the Walk of Honor out at the memorial, where you can buy bricks and leave a lasting commemorative piece in the ground and honor your service member or your business, and that also funds our scholarships. We focus on our youth. You know, we understand our youth today are our future leaders of tomorrow. So, you know, 13 scholarships a year, and we're increasing those gradually every year as we grow. We love to invest in our youth. Let's see, women veterans, we have a whole women veterans program. We're heavily involved with the Student Veterans of America. So if you're at college, like me, I went back to school when I came out of the military and finished my bachelor's and my further education. So, you know, the Student Veterans of America, Scouts, Rob Altman actually, while he wears his Frisco Veteran Advisory hat and he's the chair of that board, he's also our scout leader within the VFW. He was last year and still continues on that role today. What else? We have a motorcycle group. The motorcycle group that goes around and they promote patriotism. And I don't know if you remember, you've heard of the Patriot Guard, and you've heard we go and honor our fallen. Just last week, was it last week or the week before? A sailor that was on the USS Oklahoma at Pearl Harbor was killed. His remains were exhumed and he was identified, and they laid him to rest finally in Plano a week and a half ago, I think. And so those are and I'm transitioning with the motorcycles because they come in fierce when those type of, we want to honor their service.
Right. So how do they find you?
So here's my thing. When I came to Frisco, like, you know, a lot of people you hear, they say, oh, we don't know any, like, there's nothing here for veterans. And sometimes when I hear that, I'm just like fall out of my chair and I'm like, oh, but there is. And but let me tell you all about it kind of thing. And we're getting better on social media these days. And so you can find us on social media, Frisco VFW, but our website, friscovfw.org. Also, I didn't even touch on the biggest thing, unmet needs. A lot of things that veterans have a problem with is asking for help or assistance. When I first came back, I'm trying to get my career going. I'm all of a sudden I'm pregnant with twins, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? And so, I really tried to do it on my own for a long time, and then I realized that it wasn't possible. And then immediately when I find people like the ones that are in this room, you just are able to collaborate. And I don't know how many jobs that we've been able just to get veterans these days, just because I'm like, what do you do? Oh, you're IT? Oh, I know somebody. And we connect and we do those kind of things. It's just,
that's wonderful.
It's really, really awesome to be able to do that. We have a homeless women veteran that was sleeping in her car here at the racetrack in Frisco.
Wow.
We swooped her up and put her up in a hotel, got her a job, rewrote her resume, fixed her benefits, and we're still with her today.
That's wonderful.
Just last night, or not, a couple nights ago, my quartermaster is knocking on a door, delivering $200 worth of groceries because the family didn't have any food. Those problems that we think about, they exist. They exist here, and while we don't just help veterans of foreign wars, we help all veterans and their families. And the Frisco VFW is a little special, and call me biased, but we tend to pick up the slack on our other area communities around us when they can't get the assistance or the help they need.
Wow, that's amazing.
So a lot of times you'll hear us say, we say Frisco because we obviously are biased, but you'll also hear us say North Texas. Mm-hmm. So we obviously shared this event with the North Texas veterans, and it's simply we just want positive patriotic action in the community. Mm-hmm. And I think that we are, as veterans, really greatly placed here at this time in our nation's history to say, hey, you can get through, like I mentioned earlier, this, but veterans we can help you. We can show you how. Let's do this together. And then for future generations, as you mentioned earlier, is that positive patriotic action in our community is a really good thing.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. And Peter, so we have Bryce, who's the artist. You're on the public art board.
Yeah.
I always thought that was so interesting. That story too, how you got on the public art board.
Yeah.
But tell us a little about that role and what you're doing.
Before I go there, I got to tell the story though, because in Frisco you can't spell art without Tammy, right?
Yeah.
There's just no way, right? And it just doesn't exist. So I'm in New York on vacation, taking some time off, and I get a text from Tammy. It says, "Hey, congratulations, you're going to take my place in public art." Whoa, what? I fell out. I was like, what are you talking about? No way. And I'm thinking, there's no way. Who did that? And I remember I had applied to serve on one of the boards on the commission within the city. And the city council was their wisdom to put me on the public art board. And I was thinking, art? I didn't apply. I didn't even submit an application for art. What are you talking about? I can't follow Tammy. I had this big thought in my mind that I've got to do what she does, right? And I said, we need to meet. Let's just get back. And so I came back, and we set up, and we had coffee together. And she told me, she goes, "No, Frisco Arts, public art board." I go, "Oh, okay." Put my heart back in my chest, right? I said, "Oh, okay, I can do that." But why? Why me? And so I had a meeting with the curator for the city, Becky Deal, and that was probably one of the greatest time, because it was almost like sitting down listening to your grandmother talking to you about art and and how to care for it and take care of it right, just preparing me to serve on the board. That was the best. So when you were talking earlier, and we part of our leadership training was to go back and review some of the battles in the past, right? And so we would go and walk the battlefield and learn from it, right? Here's what the commanders had, and here's the decisions that they had to make. You kind of learn from it. So it was history of that. And I think that's what art does too, right? So serving on the Public Art Board has been really, really exciting for me. And the one thing that I enjoy more about it is being able to expose it to more people, because a lot of people just weren't aware of it. That's number one. So you get more artists involved, but also the connection to our youth, right? To get our youth involved in that, because that's where my passion lies, is with our young people. And just doing that. Bob Marley has a song, right? And there's a line in the lyric that says, music, when it hits you, you feel okay. That's what art does. And so no matter where you are, no matter what situation you find yourself in, if you get exposed to art, it does make you feel better. And so serving on the Public Art Board, after I've gotten over my heart attack, it's been really, really rewarding, because I've been able to participate in a couple initiative. The piece that we put at the Grove, right? That piece was good, and Pearson Farms, where we honor the family legacy with the piece there. So it's been great just to evaluate different artists, and I love when we do our art shows and we're able to talk to different artists. I'm always asking them, is this your first time? Right? I really don't want to talk to the person who's been doing it all along, right? I want to try to find the person who didn't know about it, but this is their first time, because our city is growing, and it's important to grow the interest in art, and so
Absolutely.
that's it.
I'm so glad you're part of that board now. Well, guys, I can't believe it, but it's already 12:55. So we have to wrap up. We'll keep the live stream going, Anthony, for just a little bit, because I do want to ask at least the last question, which I like to ask in all of our luncheons when we're in person. And but it is, what would your current self tell your younger self, and why? Let it sink in. Peter, you want to go?
Slow down. I think slow down. So, one of the people ask me all the time, why do you do some of the things that you do? I had people along the way, my entire journey. If you go back and look at it, there were people there that helped me to make decisions, right? So as I was rushing through doing different things, I found that there were people there that was basically holding me back and said, wait a minute, stop, think about it before you do it. Remember, I wanted to drive a tank. And the recruiter helped with the decision to go into an area that fit my schedule. And then I met leaders along the way who literally stopped me and teach me different things. So I think for me, if I was telling my younger self, slow down and just kind of learn and listen and pay attention to those things that are around you as you go through it, right? Don't just drive down the road and miss that great art piece that was sitting on the side.
Exactly.
That's what I would say.
That's a good one. Rob? Oh, were you pointing to Bryce? You want him to go?
Well, no, I'm not going to throw Bryce under the bus. So, and I'm looking forward to getting to know you. Let's get a beer, because I love your painting, and it's funny when we talk about veterans and art and
Me first.
but well, I know you, and
all
I
go
know
out right after this.
we have wine together sometimes.
Yeah,
So I think I would echo what Peter said. Slow down. And I would also say, really get after surrounding those people. You're surrounding yourself with those people that you want to be like. Instead of just, as a young person, running, head first, full speed ahead. Whatever my experience was, I'm going to go figure it out. Just stop, find some mentors. I do very much believe in the work hard, pull yourself up by the bootstraps sort of philosophy, but I also equally believe very strongly in, Tammy, can you show me where my bootstraps are at?
Yeah, absolutely.
People we have some toxic narrative out there right now, and it's so silly, because I had a mentor from the Bush School tell me that on a policy project that they realized that when they got past the noise, they both wanted the same thing. And so if I had stopped along the way and said, Tammy, Peter, Bryce, Sheena, where are my bootstraps at? And I could have avoided a lot of heartache as a young person. You would have said, hey, slow down, Private. There's your boots are right there, okay? Yeah, put them on.
Exactly.
So I would say slow down and seek out successful mentors.
Yeah.
It's very good.
Yeah.
Very good.
Absolutely. echo that completely. I would talk less and listen more. For sure. Yeah, I'm kind of the same way. I'm just like, I can do it all on my own. I don't, you know. But what I've come to learn over the years is that, yeah, I could probably do it, and yeah, but it wouldn't be as fun, and it wouldn't be as successful without, you know, the people that have their hands in, you know, your life as it is to shape you and mold you to who you are. I mean, everybody from my parents to the soldiers and the leaders I had in the military to my comrades in the VFW. I mean, who would have thought I would be the VFW commander? I'm like, I have no idea, like, why, but it was because I listened a little bit more to see what the need was.
Right.
And they were like, okay, you do it. So.
Well, that's what happens when you listen, right?
Well, I mean, I try. I mean,
That's good.
I really try. I'm still growing every day, but that's what I would talk less. I talk enough as it is.
Well, I'm so glad you talked today.
I actually, a couple things I would tell myself: don't be afraid. Right? I mean, I climbed and went through all the tryouts to get to where I got to, and the whole time I was plagued by self-doubt. And what do I deserve this? Am I really good enough? Is everybody going to figure out that I'm a fake? I'm faking it till I make it. Doesn't matter how good I got. I always thought I was faking it. So I would tell myself, don't be afraid. And then in that venue of run the race to win, but make sure you're running your race, not somebody else's race, preconceived notion of what you think success looks like.
Right.
Just go be you. And the reason why I think that's an important lesson is because I have been all over the world with different militaries, different cultures, and the one thing I found was everybody's the same. Myers-Briggs tries to break us up into a bunch of different personalities. We're all the same. Everybody's got, Maslow had it, everybody's got the same needs. And so especially now while we're waiting to find out timestamp if somebody watches this in a month, we're still waiting to find out who's going to be the president. And as rife as people are and polarized and they want to get entrenched of I'm a unique, I'm a snowflake, I'm different, I'm better, I'm a victim, I'm not, we're all the same. We all want the same thing. And so if we can focus on the camaraderie, what brings us together, the unity of what makes each of us special. We served at different times, in different locations, but you can always find one thing that brings people together. So focus on that commonality, and you'll find that there's a lot of bleed over, and not so different. And just slow down and just be a little bit more happy.
So well said. And yes, that timestamp is so interesting, right? We are waiting to figure out who our next president's going to be. Maybe it happened while we were in this live stream, I don't know. But thank you all for joining today and for the conversation and exactly up to your point, talking about things that bring us together, because we all do really want the same thing. So thank you all for joining. And Kalika, were there any questions that we didn't address? We're good? Okay. Well, thank you for being there, and Anthony and Annette for hosting. And until next time, be kind to one another and keep creating. Thanks so much. We'll see you. You guys were great.